Okie dokie, welcome to Flute Q&A number 18. I'm Jane Kavanagh, I'm a flute teacher. I teach people proper technique of the flute, the little intricacies, the little steps of proper technique to transform your flute playing. So we have 4 questions today in this Q&A. They are from Debi, Liz, Bruce and Joseph. Now, if you're wondering why I'm holding this, all will be revealed in the first question because that's the first question that's been asked. Okay, I'm running out of hands here. Hang on a second. So if you'd like to ask a question, just go to flute.school/ask. So that's www.flute.school/ask, and you can put in your question there because I regularly record these Flute Q&As for you. Okay, the first question from Debi, as I said. Hi, Debi. She says, I'm assuming you're a she, I'm a new flute player playing approximately 3 months and I'm having difficulty stabilizing the flute when playing middle C. I'm an adult student but play a curved head joint due to being of small stature. I'm also using a Thumbport which helps to an extent. Okay, so firstly let me enlighten anyone who doesn't know what a Thumbport is. You can buy these at music shops. Heaps of places sell them, so that it's not from a special shop, just from music shops or online anyway. And it's something that you stick where your thumb port is there, and it helps you feel comfortable when you're playing the flute, especially if you have a particularly bendy thumb. Some people have, like a lot of people have very, very bendy thumbs. I don't, and the thumb ports can help. So there you go. There's like an extra cue in this Q&A. What was I going to say? Oh yes, so Debi says that she has problems stabilizing the flute when she's playing middle C. So let me just clarify a couple of things. In the grand scheme of music, piano has such a huge range. Okay, hang on, new camera. So I've got to work out where to look. I'm going to look there. I think that's if I'm looking right at you now, it means I've discovered where the camera is on my new camera. Fine. Okay, so piano has such a huge range that we can use this as an example. Middle C, in the grand scheme of just music in general, is the middle C on the piano. On the flute, it's the lowest note on the flute. Unless, of course, you have a B foot. That's a different story. So this is middle C, technically. However, when I'm teaching the flute, I really don't know why I put that plant there. Let me just move that. When I'm teaching the flute, I call that low C. Because when we're talking in flute terms, we just say that's low C. And then I'll say this is... I don't even give it a name. I say that C. And then high C. So there's 4 Cs that you could play on the flute. Now, Debi, I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but I suspect, and I'm going to answer your question, that is this one. And the reason that I suspect that it's that C that you're talking about is because you're having trouble stabilizing the flute, and a lot of people do on that C, and it's because your thumb is off. Now, this is not something that's inherent to the flute. If you're having trouble stabilizing the flute when you take your thumb off, it means that the balance of the flute is wrong, and you need to fix this. So it's really good that you told me about that you play with a curved head joint, because that is... I think this is going to be your problem. So I'm going to explain what to do about this. Firstly, I'll talk a little bit about if anyone else is having problems with taking your thumb off and feeling like your flute is feeling like it's going to roll in or feeling like it's going to drop. It means that the balance of your flute is off, which means that your hand position is slightly not in the right spot. There's a lot of weight on these keys, and particularly these rods have more weight. So these rods have more weight than the front of the flute. So the flute has a tendency to roll backwards. So if your flute is already rolled in like this, and you take your thumb off, it's going to feel like it's going to drop. So just make sure you don't have the flute tipped too far in towards you, or not at all, in fact. The Flute, I don't know if you know about the Flute Academy, but there's a program in the Flute Academy called the 45-Day Flute Transformation. There's a module on there all about balance of the flute, stability and balance and hand position. And it teaches you exactly how to get your flute in balance so that it never feels like you're going to drop it. Ironically, I just almost dropped the curved head joint. Okay, so the curved head joint Oh my gosh, yes, we're still recording. I thought it stopped. New camera. It's all happening. The curved head joint. So let's see if the curved head joint fits my flute. I have two of them and I don't think either of them fit. Oh, yes, it fits. I can demonstrate for you, Debbie. Okay, there's the other one. That one definitely doesn't fit. Okay. So Debbie, sometimes people teach you to put the curved head joint onto your flute like this. Like that. So it's coming, it's level like that. You know how I just said about the weight of these rods, pulling the flute, rolling the flute towards you and feeling like you're going to drop your flute, especially when you play low C and you take your thumb off. This is just going to exacerbate it. This is not the right position for a curved head joint. So you might have been taught to do that, and I'm going to explain why I think this way is so much better. So you have the hole in line with these keys and you have it directly above the flute. And the reason for that is that it doesn't throw off the balance at all with your flute. So when the weight is directly over the flute, the top of the flute, it's not going to feel like it's going to roll any more than a usual straight head flute. So then when you play it like this, it's so much more comfortable than if you've got it sticking towards you. So if you had your flute, your head joint, your curved head joint sticking out this way, then change it to this position, and you know the reason why. If you already do have it like this, make sure that it's actually straight on top so that it's not sort of tilting forward at all. So the weight is directly on top. And then your problem then, if this is how you've already got it, your problem of feeling like you're going to, how did you say it? Stabilizing the flute when playing C is just now exactly the same problem that everyone using a straight head joint has, which is if you have your flute too rolled in towards you, it's going to feel like you're going to be dropping your flute. And it's exacerbated a little bit for you because when you turn your flute in towards you, which is not good, there's extra weight coming over the flute, and that's going to make the flute want to roll even more. So basically you need to get the weight all on top of your flute with the curved head joint. So there you go. Now, anyone who's not Debbie, if you're wondering why you play a curved curved head joint, a flute with a curved head joint, it's mostly for children because they're small. And obviously if you're a small adult, curved head joints can be excellent because it reduces the amount that you need to reach down for the flute. So that's great. They're an amazing invention. Okay, the next question, gotta remember to look at the camera. I'm looking at you. I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking at you. I do feel like I'm talking to someone. Like right now there's no one here, but I really do feel like I'm talking to a person. So I'm talking to you. The next question comes from Liz. How often should I clean my flute pads? And could you provide some easy instructions on how to do this? Thanks. Okay, yes. So the pads on the flutes, Liz, if you're talking about the pads, these yellow pads under here, they're extremely delicate. And in fact, I never clean them and I never have cleaned them. When you're a pro flute player, and playing a lot, I mean, if you're playing, say, every day, like 20, 30, even more minutes every day, you would want to be getting your flute serviced by a good flute service person, repair person, once a year, just to give it a bit of a tune-up. When I say tune-up, I don't mean getting the flute in tune. That's totally different. Give it a bit of a tune-up like you'd do for a car, a service. And they will make sure that all these pads are in good condition and they'll replace any that need replacing. They're very delicate. I don't clean them myself. If you're not playing as much as a pro, if you're not playing every day, if you play a couple of times a week, then probably every 2 years you would want to get your flute serviced and just looked at. Normally they don't replace pads. Occasionally they do, but every time I put my flute in for a service, I don't get any pads replaced. Normally what they're doing is looking at the mechanism and checking that the mechanism on the flute is exactly aligned so that the keys close and there are no leaks from any of the holes or the keys when you close them. So servicing is important. It's not just for pads. So actually you can see there's mine in different colors. Some of them are very yellow, some of them are more faded yellow because they're either a different brand of pad or they've been replaced more soon, otherwise known as sooner, than other pads. So you don't actually clean the pads, and they shouldn't get dirty either. I can see marks underneath mine where the holes have closed, and I guess you could call it dirty. There's like a ring, but it's not anything that needs fixing. So there you go. Leave the pads to a professional, basically, because they're delicate. You don't want to be really doing anything to them. Occasionally, if you get I call them spit bubbles, if you get condensation closing off the hole because it's a very humid day, you can use very thin cigarette paper, avoiding the glue, to carefully dab out the moisture. But you only ever dab, you never pull out the paper because it will rip these pads. They're delicate. You don't want to get these wet, you don't want to play in the rain because you don't want these pads to get wet because they'll go boof and then not be able to close the hole. I wrote something else for you, Debbie. Liz, just hang on a second. Oh, I said everything. There you go. Amazing memory. Actually, I have a terrible memory, so I'm surprised that I got everything. So hopefully that helps you, Liz. I almost called you Debbie. The next question comes from Bruce. He says, how do I control salivating, particularly when tonguing? So this is a great question, Bruce, and someone actually asked this on an earlier Q&A. They didn't ask about tonguing, which I'll address for you in a second. They asked about how to stop salivating when playing the flute in general. And I didn't know. I've noticed that dairy, if I eat dairy, it makes me kind of a bit more dribbly when I play. So I wouldn't have a glass of milk and then play the flute. Lemon also makes me salivate, but not to the point where it affects my playing. But for some people, it seems to affect their playing. So do you know what I did? The last time I went to my dentist, who is an amazing dentist, she's a holistic dentist, so she knows a lot about things that surround dentistry. So I knew she'd be able to answer this question. She's also a very good clarinet player. I walked in there and I know she's going to be able to answer the question of how does someone stop themselves salivating so much when they play? And she said, I don't know. She said, our normal problem is people with dry mouths. We want people to salivate. So she didn't even know. I mean, I was going to say she couldn't even answer my question. She is a dentist, so I wouldn't expect her to know about flute playing. But I really thought she would know the answer to that, and she didn't, which made me, I kind of didn't know what to think then. So I can't really help that general salivating question. However, Bruce, I can answer about the fact for you that it's generally when you're tonguing, specifically when you're tonguing. It sounds like if it's only when you're tonguing, your salivating problem, it sounds like you're tonguing in the wrong position or tonguing using the wrong mechanism. So you probably already know, you probably already know that generally speaking, the right way to tongue is using the tip of your tongue behind here. So not the back of your teeth and not exactly the roof of your mouth, but sort of on the border between your top teeth, the back of your top teeth, and the ridge on the inside of your mouth. However, that's very general. You know how I mentioned before about the 45-day flute transformation that's in the Flute Academy? Who did I mention it to? Did I mention it? Yeah. Did I already mention it? To Debbie. Oh my gosh, I'm going crazy. Did I mention it? But anyway, I'll put a link for you underneath your question. There's a tonguing module. There's a whole tonguing module, and day 37 in the 45-day flute transformation is the fundamentals of correct tonguing. So I give you demonstrations and I show you exactly how you ought to be tonguing. So what I just described then is enough to get you on the right path, especially if you're not doing that tonguing already. And then day 38 in the 45-day flute transformation is tongue troubleshooting. So I show you how different types of wrong tonguing sound, how they look and how they feel, and then how to fix them all. So, I mean, that's like a 10 or 15 minute lesson. So it's quite lengthy, going through the different incorrect positions of tonguing and what they sound like. So you can work out what you're actually doing wrong. So hopefully that position that I mentioned puts you on the right path if you didn't know that already. And it also might be that your tongue is too far forward when you're tonguing. So if your tongue is too far forward, it might encourage spit to come out when you're playing. And so, yeah, if it's not in that position that I mentioned, try and get it into that position. Okay, the next question. Yes, so I'm looking at my notes. The next question comes from Joseph. He says, so Joseph is in the Flute Academy and he's asked other questions inside the Flute Academy. So I know his style of questioning, and this is very Joseph. What occupies the brain space of a flute player whose brain space needn't be occupied by attending to elements of technique, the elements having become well habituated? Joseph, I love the way you write. It is so exact and quite, I was going to say poetic, elegant. You write very elegantly. So what occupies the brain space of a flute player whose brain space needn't be occupied by attending to elements of technique, the elements having become well habituated? The reason he asks that is because in the Flute Academy, I teach you proper technique. And he's saying once you've adopted all the little tweaks of proper technique that you learn through the flute transformation in the academy, once you've adopted those, what do you think about? So when you've got nothing else that you need to be concentrating on, you don't need to be thinking about your tone, you don't need to be thinking about the right hand position to free up your fingers, you don't need to be thinking of getting tension out of your shoulders to free up your fingers, you don't need to think about your breathing because you've worked out been taught how to breathe properly. He said, what do you think about? So I wrote a list for you, Joseph. The first thing that came to mind was, what do I think about when I'm playing? And I don't need to think about when I'm playing. I think about food. I think about what I'm eating for dinner. No kidding. Then another example, the other day I went back to real life flute teaching because in Australia, which is where I live, by the way, and am from, we went back to flute teaching in schools because we've had a very long summer holiday break. So we went back and it was February, and the first lesson that I taught, I was demonstrating something for my student, and I had the most bizarre thought that I've ever had when I've been playing the flute. So this is good timing that you asked this question. The most bizarre thought. I thought, in my first lesson back, I went, oh my God, have I forgotten my flute? I was playing my flute. It was so weird. So it felt so natural that I didn't need to think about any of these technique things you're talking about, Joseph, that I actually thought that I'd forgotten my flute. I know that's totally weird, but there you go. That's what I thought. On a serious note, Joseph, when you don't have to think about your technique, it gives you freedom, and it gives you freedom to express yourself. It gives you freedom to enjoy the music, and it gives you freedom to be creative with your expression. It gives you freedom to be able to try something new expressively in the music, something that you've played maybe sort of in a more somber way or a serious way. It gives you freedom to maybe the next time try that in a playful way. Something that can influence how and why you might mix things up in a creative way with your expression is it gives you having good technique like you have learned in the Flute Academy gives you freedom to communicate with the other musicians that you're playing with. And if someone gives you a playful look, then you can put playfulness into your music. So it gives you this ability to communicate with others and connect with others that you're playing with. So that's all the sorts of things that go through my head when I'm playing, and I know other flute players and musicians are similar. I just dropped my page, let me get it. Let me see if I wrote out anything else onto this list. No, that's it. As you know, Joseph, day 43, I'm sure you've done this already, day 43 of the transformation is all about expression. And I elaborate on what I just said to you there about how proper technique it enables you to be able to express yourself with your flute playing. So there you go. That was the flute Q&A for this time. I think it was 18. Was it 18? Yes. Flute Q&A number 18. Don't forget to ask a question. Go to www.flute.school/ask. You can ask your question there. And I'll see you in the next Q&A. Bye.